Yes, yes, yeah, yes! Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who own Eric Karlsson in their keeper pools. I'm your host, Elon Dubrowski, and with me, as always, my co-host, Brian Calm.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody. We are locked and loaded for another fantastic episode coming up. But first off, we need to all let you know that somebody is about to keep Karlsson for life, better than any of us have ever gotten. Sorry to break everyone's hearts who's listening. Eric Karlsson is engaged. Fantasy hockey headline number one. Eric Karlsson is engaged. Look out for the year he has a child. That's going to be a rough one.
Uh-oh. Hopefully that doesn't come soon. Hopefully that we won't be keeping Karlsson in that year. But yeah, Melinda Curry is keeping Karlsson for life. Hopefully. Wish them the best. Very exciting. We've got a big episode for you. This is like going to be the happiest thing we're going to tell you about today, because next we're going to talk for an hour about all of your players being injured. So a little bit of happiness. A little bit more, I can tell you that we are presented by DobberHockey.com. So that's good news, because that's the best fantasy hockey website out there. I use it all the time. I go there every day. I love the daily ramblings, get a full write-up of everything that happened the day before, and if they think that players are sustainable, not sustainable, all of that. Plus, you've got your line combos, your starting goalies, basically everything you need to manage your team, the player profiles. I love DobberHockey.com.
Yeah, and if you ever need a second opinion, of course, there's our patron Facebook group. But over at Dobber Hockey, there's a whole forum full of people eager to offer you information, which is a nice social feature of the website.
It's a very big site. There's a lot going on there. I probably don't even know about all the features, especially once you get into their frozen pool tools. Anyway, okay, Brian, let's bring it down a little bit, because this week has been insane. Like, this has been a weird week, and so many big stars have gotten injured. So many players overall, but just the number of actual stars, top players on their teams going down, has been shocking. There was a patron of the podcast who had all three of the first three I'm going to mention, and the first one, maybe the biggest, I guess you could tell me if you disagree, but Steven Stamkos underwent successful arthroscopic surgery to repair a lateral meniscus in his right knee on Thursday, and he's going to be out for 4 months, which is like, what are we in November, December, January, February, March? It's like basically to the end of the season. Maybe he'll be back for the playoffs. That doesn't help you in fantasy. This is brutal news. And he was having such an amazing season. 9 goals, 11 assists in 17 games played, 20 points in 17 games. Oh, this is the Stamkos that you were drafting for, saying, you know what? I think Stamkos is going to bounce back. I think he's been great. You were right. You were so smart, and you get punished. Brutal. Oh, I'm so sad. I don't even have him, and I feel so bad. So anyways, Stamkos is out. What does this mean for the other Tampa Bay players? Maybe it means Tampa Bay is going to have to step up, and all these guys are going to have to start chipping in. Like, since Stamkos went down, they've defeated Buffalo 4-1 and Philly 3-0. The lines have been jumping around all over the place. Like, definitely we can't say, oh, this guy's going to be playing with Kucherov, because, like, who knows? But I can tell you, Tyler Johnson has 3 points in his last 3 games. Andre Palat, who has been so quiet, he had a goal and assist against Philly. Druin is back. He had a goal and an assist in his 2 games back. Filppula is getting points. He has 4 assists in his last 3 games. Alex Killorn is getting points. Nemesnikov had an assist yesterday. All of these Tampa guys who were always like cycling in and out of our lineups, except for, I guess, Johnson and Palat, who we just hold in our lineups and tear our hair out when they don't produce when we think they should. It's like everyone is producing right now. So, Brian, I guess that's a lot to throw at you. But it's like a lot of potential players to benefit from the Stamkos injury. Do you think that like kind of all these guys benefit because it's just an extra spot for these guys to get in on the power play and in the top 6?
It's truly amazing how one guy leaving the lineup can open so much opportunity for so many other people. There's so much secondary and even tertiary scoring on the Lightning that once they need to rely on it, when their point per game guy goes, hopefully it comes through for them. You know, we've bemoaned the mediocrity of Palat and Johnson for pretty much the entire first month of the season. But with Stamkos out, maybe this is the kick they need to get going. They've both seen an uptick in minutes. Palat saw a season-high 80% share of his team's power play time in Saturday's game against Philadelphia. Both these guys may have been dropped in your league if our tweeters and patrons are any indication. We've had a lot of questions. Should I drop Palat for this guy, Johnson for this guy? Now's the time to move them onto your watch list, if not onto your roster. Now, Jonathan Druin is a guy who I'm most interested in watching right now. He had 5 points in 10 games to start the year. His return from a presumed concussion coincided with Stamkos' departure from the lineup. And remember that in Druin's coming out party during last year's playoffs, Stamkos was out of the lineup then as well, and Druin was left to run the show on the power play and pretty much in all situations. Then we look at the other guys, maybe the more tertiary guys like Filppula, Killorn, Nemesnikov. They're all going to get a little bump as they are going to need to step up a little more as Tampa scores by. They're going to need to step up a little more as Tampa scores by committee. And on a team like Tampa, where everything's always being shuffled around, expect these guys to have fluctuating value over the next while, but with higher floors than they would with Stamkos healthy. One guy who made a big impression his first year in Tampa when Stamkos was out with his injury back in 2013-14, Valtteri Filppula. He stepped up huge that year. He had 58 points in 75 games his first year in Tampa. Stamkos, again, he missed 45 that year. Filppula had a point per game pace for a lot of the time that Stamkos was out. Also a little bit before and after Stamkos was out. So even with Stamkos in the lineup, I think that was just a really good year for Filppula. I was also going to throw in, don't forget that Ryan Callahan is coming back soon too, except he has been back. 11 games, a goal, an assist, 15 shots, 31 hits. So at least he's helping you there. Averaging 3 minutes less of time on ice per game than he was last year. But since Stamkos has been out, Callahan has seen his 2 highest time on ice totals of the year. Still in the bottom 6 role at the moment. Pretty fantasy irrelevant. Just putting his name out there because I was about to disparage him terribly. And I think even if he does get into the top 6, if Stamkos isn't there, then he's going to get you 2-3 hits a game, and that's really all you can rely on him for.
Well, I mean, if he's playing with someone like Nikita Kucherov, like it really depends. Kucherov is also having himself a year, right? 22 points in 18 games. He's like just as big of a star as Stamkos at this point, in my opinion. So like these lines change so often. I think if Callahan's in the top line, like getting on the top power play, he's probably worth adding if your league counts hits, of course, because at least you're going to get those in maybe a point or two. But yeah, it's interesting, Brian, because all of these guys, normally when a big star player gets injured, aside from like the one guy who maybe takes his place, when Brian Little went down last year and then Scheifele took over, like that was an obvious benefit. But usually we talk about people getting hurt because they're losing this like all-star centerman. But here you're saying if Johnson and Palat were dropped, now's the time to add them to your watch list and maybe add them back. So it really just depends on the team. And I guess Tampa's the kind of team where they're now going to have to spread around their offense a bit more, and maybe there'll be more points to go around for more players. Of course, at the same time, it's been like a couple of games. We'll have to see how things shake out. It's very possible that Palat will go back to doing absolutely nothing for the next 10 games. But yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely interesting to watch. There's another injury on Tampa, actually. Anton Strawman has been injured for a bit, and he was having a decent season, 7 points in 15 games played. So I was checking to see. I assume that means that Hedman must be getting like all of the power play time. But actually, last game, he only had 20% of the time. The majority went to Nikita Nestorov, who, by the way, has 2 goals and 1 assist in his last 3 games played, including a power play goal. Should Hedman owners be worried? Like, he's still having a good year and putting up points, but I guess with him, it's always the case. He's never getting the power play time, even with Strawman out. And I guess should people be looking at Nikita Nestorov as a potential short-term ad?
If Hedman owners have never had to be worried with Strawman in the lineup, then they don't need to be worried with Strawman out of the lineup. Let's just call that a blip, something that happened. Maybe Hedman was injured, or, the power play was just owning the zone for the duration of the power play. So maybe Nestorov could be good for, 30, 35 point pace for as long as he's there for Strawman. He has seen 4 consecutive games with 45% or more of Tampa's power play time on ice share. So that's positive. Maybe a good depth add, but it won't last beyond the time that Strawman's out. Strawman's already missed 4 or 5 games, might miss another 4 or 5. It's pretty unclear. He's day-to-day right now. So I think you should only be making that move if you're in a league without transaction limits.
Right, yeah. Bring Nestorov in for a game or two if you have room on your roster and you want to get someone who might be able to get you, a power play point. Maybe if he's getting all the power play time with Nikita Kucherov and that whole band of other guys we've talked about. One other guy I want to talk about, since we're on Tampa Bay, we have to go in nets and talk about Andrei Vasilevskiy. He had himself a week. He's riding 2 straight shutouts right now, and he had 1 goal against the game before that. So he's on quite the hot streak. Overall, Vasilevskiy now has a .953 save percentage in 7 games in the season compared to Bishop's .909 save percentage. Like, are we going to start slipping maybe into more of a timeshare than, at the beginning of the year it was assumed it was just going to be 2 games for Bishop, 1 game for Vas, and that's how it was going to go all season. But Vasilevskiy has outplayed Bishop so far, and obviously small sample size. But I'm just curious what you think, Brian. Like, if you're a Bishop owner right now, do you need to be worried that you're maybe going to start losing games to Vasilevskiy? And if you're a Vasilevskiy owner, like, I don't know, I feel like now's a great time to have him, especially if he's like your 3rd goalie. Sometimes you get people asking if they should trade for Vasilevskiy. And I think it's like really, if you could have like a third goalie that you don't even necessarily need all the games, but you know that whenever he does play, it's going to be really good. I think that's valuable. Plus the upside of maybe getting more games. He's been great. Bishop hasn't. What's your take on the Tampa Bay goalie situation right now?
Well, just to talk everyone off the ledge who is a Bishop owner, 4 of his last 6 and 6 of his last 9 have been very good starts for Bishop. In fact, 4 of his last 6 have been 935 or higher save percentage performances. He's winning more games than he was earlier in the year. If you look at it, you've got Vasilevsky. He's won 5 out of 7 starts. Bishop's won 7 out of 12. Who are you going to turn to? I guess Vasilevsky is definitely giving Tampa reason to think that maybe they should turn to him sooner than they were planning. Ben Bishop is down towards the bottom of the league so far this year in even strength save percentage, which of course doesn't serve him very well. But like I'm saying, he's turning in some really good performances. They're just being washed out by some really bad performances as well.
Yeah, so also Tampa Bay, they're not in a normal situation. Like they know they're only going to probably be able to have one of these goalies next year. So why not? Like, I don't know, to me, I just think like, why not give Vass more starts if he's showing that he could handle it? Like last year, I think they wanted to give Vasilevsky more starts, but just he was blowing in. Bishop was having himself like a Vezina nomination season, so obviously they couldn't bench Bishop. But now that, I don't know, to me, I feel like I would be very nervous if I was a Ben Bishop owner. There's a reason why I don't draft guys like that. Like I don't really like getting the tandem guys, the ones who I think there's going to be competition from. And sometimes, I look really dumb like when I don't draft, I don't know, Varlamov because I'm afraid of Picard, or Brian, you could probably, like San Jose when I thought that Alex Stalock was going to like steal starts. But sometimes like Vasilevsky and in Pittsburgh with Murray and Fleury, like I just didn't want any piece of it. Obviously, maybe in hindsight I should have gone for Murray, right? Because he's clearly taking the job. Maybe you'll disagree with me.
Well, Fleury seemed
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, Fleury seemed so strong to start the year, and I think you would have said, forget Murray. When he comes back, he's definitely got to be the backup. And so we've seen that situation flip. This one could still flip too. Same with Murray and Fleury. Like it could go back and forth a couple times through the year. I think what you're looking for is to see what percentage of a team's games Bishop or Fleury is getting to start, and especially in Tampa, where the assumption was that Vasilevsky gets 1 out of 3. Bishop has now started just less than 2 out of every 3 games, 19 games into the season. So that's a number to keep watching, a ratio to keep watching to see if Bishop does get back up to that 2 out of every 3, or if it evens out more towards half and half.
Yeah, well, if Vasilevsky keeps getting shutouts, I think he's going to be able to push that ratio up a little bit. We'll see how he does in his next game. All right, let's move on to New Jersey. Another huge star going down. Taylor Hall could miss approximately 3 to 4 weeks with a left knee injury, and he was having a great season. 12 points in 14 games. I feel like you couldn't have hoped for any more from Taylor Hall if you drafted him, especially on a team like New Jersey. And we were talking, like all season, I feel like we've been talking about all these guys in New Jersey who normally maybe we wouldn't care about. But since they were playing with Taylor Hall, we liked them. Like last week, we were excited about Travis Zajac playing with Hall on the top line of the top power play. And you were like, go for Zajac even over Eric Stahl, I think. And I was like, really? But it made sense because Taylor Hall is having a good year and Zajac's right along with him, doing well as well. But you know what? With Hall out, it's just like all the value seems to disappear. Zajac has no points in 3 games last week. He was now playing with P.A. Parenteau and Bo Bennett. So you swap out Taylor Hall for Bo Bennett, you're definitely going to see a hit there. Henrique and Palmieri have been shuffling around lately. Camilleri's still out for personal reasons, should be back next week. But overall, like none of these guys are really doing anything. Even Damon Severson, who we were excited about, maybe you were more apprehensive about it, maybe you were smart to do so. A lot of people wanted to drop some really good players for Severson. He had 1 goal at Dallas 3 games ago. He had 2 assists in a 4-2 win versus Buffalo the game before that. But that's while Hall was still there. And those are his only 3 points in his last 7 games. So Damon Severson, especially with Taylor Hall out and maybe even without, isn't keeping up this almost point per game pace that he was doing at the beginning of the season. Man, like Ovitu is currently injured himself, so you can't even, I don't know, like are there literally any, aside from Corey Schneider, are there any New Jersey Devils worth owning right now in like a standard size league? Like if every single New Jersey Devil was available in the cupful in free agency for you right now, Brian, would you add any of them?
I've got one, and I'll give him to you in just a second before I explain just how bad this is for the whole lineup. The Devils are 23rd in the league in goals for per game, and that's with Taylor Hall in the lineup. I certainly wouldn't expect them to score any more now that he is out. And you heard how excited I was about Travis Zajac last week. I was all on board with Travis Zajac centering Taylor Hall, getting an insane amount of shot attempts compared to what he's used to seeing. And then, boom, this destroys all value of, I'm going to say, almost all New Jersey Devils, all except, I'm going for it here, Michael Camilleri. Yes, he's out for personal reasons right now. Expected to rejoin the team in 2 or 3 games. Maybe that could be extended though, so don't count on it. But he had taken on a secondary scoring role this year. And that actually might be generous to him, considering in his 12 games played this year, he scored 0 goals in 11 of those. All 3 of his tallies came in a single game, a hat-trick performance against Carolina. Then he played just 1 more goalless game after that before taking leave from the team. But once he's back, I really think you need to keep an eye on him and whoever he's playing with as the likeliest scorers of New Jersey's goals until Taylor Hall returns. I'm for sure curious to see what Camilleri can do when returned to a primary scoring role, in which he really succeeded last year. His offensive rate stats so far are actually not all that different from last year, and they're actually up for shooting and shot attempts. But to date, he's seen a huge drop-off in average time on ice to the tune of 3.5 minutes less ice time per game. And his power play opportunity this year has also gotten worse. But with Hall out of the lineup, I think a lot of that sort of melts away, and he gets some of those minutes back. He gets some of that power play opportunity back, and he is worth watching.
Yeah, that is an interesting point you make, because last year, yeah, Camilleri had a great year before he got injured, playing with, I guess, Henrique and Lee Stempniak. So, okay, Lee Stempniak's no longer there, but P.A. Parenteau's probably close to as good. I think like it's possible that they can get something going again. Maybe,
Adam
yeah.
Henrique?
Yeah, I would. Wait, what?
Adam Henrique is still there?
I know, I said that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. What was I saying? I was saying Parenteau is just as good. Yeah, that's a good. So yeah, I think it's nice for you that Camilleri is out with these personal reasons so that you could keep him stashed in your IR and let your hunch sort of fester for a little bit and you don't have to actually use a roster spot to have dibs on him. I think if I were you, once it gets announced that Camilleri is going to be coming back, I would like set your lineup in the cupful for like a week in advance just so that you could have some time to really keep Camilleri in your IR and see how he does and see if he's actually worth dropping someone good for. But okay, yeah. Overall, though, this isn't a Tampa Bay situation. I don't think a lot of players are going to be stepping up to pick up the points that Taylor Hall was going to get. I think there's just going to be fewer points. If you're starting a goalie against a team and you're trying to decide which goalie to start on a daily basis, take the goalie playing against New Jersey, I think, right now. Shall we go now to Calgary, Brian, for another huge star, I guess, left wing going down?
Yes, let's go to Calgary.
Yeah, it's like a Band-Aid. Let's just get these all out of the way. It's sad. We'll give you some players on hot streaks to end the show. And, you know, we're telling you hopefully some players to look at that benefit from these injuries. But another bad one, Johnny Gaudreau, expected to be out 6 weeks with a fractured finger. He was hacked and slashed all game long. The Calgary management is not happy about it, but doesn't change the fact that Gaudreau is going to be out. By the way, I remember that I read that someone complained that I say his name incorrectly. I think it was on Reddit. So I guess Gaudreau isn't how you say it. It's Gaudreau, right?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Johnny Gaudreau. I'll try to do that from now on. Okay. So Gaudreau was just starting to get going. He had 3 goals and assists in his last 4 games. You know, he sort of had a slow start to the year along with Sean Monahan. And you'd think this must be bad for Sean Monahan losing his all-star line mate. But he actually had a rare good game for the season with 1 goal and 1 assist, 2 shots on goal versus Chicago on Friday. Calgary's playing again today. So we'll see how he does. Sam Bennett is the one who gets Gaudreau's spot on the first line and also the top power play, and he had a good game after moving to that top line with Monahan and Brouwer. He had 1 goal, 1 assist, and he had 1 goal, 1 assist, and 6 shots on goal against Chicago. So, you know, we had a lot of people already asking before the Gaudreau injury if they should be dropping Monahan. Like, how do we think he'll be affected moving forward? Is this going to be like a Calgary situation? Is this going to be like a Tampa Bay situation where the star player gets injured and maybe other people will be able to step up? Or like, to me, I kind of think, yeah, Gaudreau. To me, I think, yeah, Monahan had a really good game, but overall, I can't imagine he's going to be able to do as well playing with Sam Bennett as opposed to Johnny Gaudreau.
You wouldn't think so. And then Monahan goes and gets his first multi-point effort of the season. The goal he scored when Gaudreau's first game out was his first goal in 15 games. And now you're watching Monahan and Bennett and seeing if they can make anything of this situation. Though part of the problem with Monahan and Gaudreau was that Calgary couldn't find a winger to complete their line or even 2 other forwards to play with them if they split them apart. So it seems counterintuitive that suddenly things might click for Monahan with Gaudreau out. That said, nothing was clicking for Monahan before, so why not hope that this is some kind of kick in the pants, like in Tampa as well. I'm intrigued to see how it all plays out, especially because maybe this could be a good thing for Sam Bennett as well, who we were expecting a little bit more than what we've seen from him. So yeah, the spotlight was on the star player before, in this case, Johnny Gaudreau, and with him gone, maybe that extra urgency, that extra harsh light on Monahan is what kicks things into gear. It's not something that you should buy into by any means. Like, it's a really hopeful, optimistic take on things, but what else do we have at this point with the season that Monahan and all Calgary Flames are having? Like, this has had ripple effects on Gaudreau, Hamilton. This has had ripple effects on Giordano, Hamilton, and countless other Calgary bit players who you might hope to get a few points. Troy Brouwer has gone ice cold.
Well, okay, I know you're not surprised about that last one, but yeah, actually, Hamilton and Giordano, I guess we talked about Giordano last week. Hamilton also, he's just done nothing, right? He only has 6 points in 19 games. He's been scoreless for so many games in a row. There was a question on Twitter today asking if the person should drop Hamilton for Anthony DeAngelo, and at first I thought, of course not. But then you look, Hamilton's doing nothing. Anthony DeAngelo, by the way, still on the top power play in Arizona and getting points. Like, at what point you just go like, you know what, fine. Drop Dougie Hamilton for a streamer guy that's looking good right now. Like, it's tough. I guess we'll see what happens with Gaudreau out. Obviously, it was a good game against Chicago. We'll see if they can keep it going. I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Things do not seem to be working on either side of the ice for Calgary right now. So anyone invested in their offense, their defense, or their goaltending might be another rough little while, at least until Gaudreau comes back, and then you can start hoping again.
Yeah, well, speaking of their goaltending, Brian, all this week, we haven't seen Brian Elliott playing. Chad Johnson has been stealing starts. He's played 3 games in a row for the Flames, and he's playing today against Detroit. Unfortunately, he's already let in a goal. It's 1-0 for Detroit, but, you know, whatever. It's still just very impressive that he's getting these starts, and really, like, crappy for Brian Elliott owners. So at least, hey, Elliott hasn't been in your net to blow up your stats, so that's one benefit. But yeah, Chad Johnson had a 27 save shutout versus Minnesota. Then he had a 20 save 2-1 win versus Arizona. Then he had this like 21 save 3-2 loss against Chicago. So actually, before I said it was a good game against Chicago, they lost 3-2. Maybe I shouldn't get too excited about it just because Monahan got a couple of points. But you know what? That I watched that game, and that third goal that Chad Johnson led in, that was a fluky goal that shouldn't have even counted. It was a high stick by Hossa. But anyway, just to say, Chad Johnson has been good lately. On the season, he has a .910 save percentage, which isn't that great, but it's better than Brian Elliott's .882 save percentage. So do you think this is just a short-lived thing and Elliott will be back to being the starter soon? Or is Chad Johnson someone we should start taking seriously at this point as maybe the new starter in Calgary, or at the very least, like a 50-50 guy with Brian Elliott?
So I underemphasized Chad Johnson's potential role in Buffalo last year when it was him and Linus Ullmark dueling it out, and he ended up coming out on top and having a pretty good season on the whole. I think I'm going to make the same mistake, or be willing to make the same mistake again. I don't think he's an average NHL goalie. I think he's a subpar NHL starter, and I think eventually the pendulum will swing back to Brian Elliott. The question is, will the team in front of them have it together enough to make any of them look good? Right now, Brian Elliott deserves to be where he is on the bench. He and only 2 other starters are way down. He is only in the same neighborhood as 2 other starters in terms of quality start percentage. He and Steve Mason, as a matter of fact, 36.4% of their starts have been quality so far this year. Ryan Miller, the only starter below them, at 33.3%. So there's not a whole lot of good to say about Brian Elliott's game so far this year. I still think he's good. I don't know that he's St. Louis good, although some of the numbers seem to suggest he was. I saw enough of him in Ottawa to know him as a streaky goalie who could wither and wilt behind a team that can't handle itself defensively, or on a random night, he might totally step up to the challenge and steal a win. That sort of inconsistency, though, is going to hurt him in Calgary, especially since they've only committed to him for 1 year. We really liked him. He was at the top of our tier 5, Elon, wasn't he? Or tier 4? Tier 4. He was at the top of that tier as somebody that we thought really had a good shot to win some games and put up a strong save percentage based on his adjusted goals saved above average per 60 minutes numbers. not looking that way so far. If you are an Elliott owner and you need goalie starts, I think you'd be wise to cuff him with Johnson.
Or just like drop him. Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like Brian Elliott, I guess you're saying there's still a chance. We've had a lot of questions of, like someone has, let's say, 3 goalies, including Elliott, and then they're asking, oh, should I pick up this? I don't know. There's been some like goalies that have been popping up in free agency, whoever it is, Hellebuck, but probably even someone a little bit worse. But like, and so we've been sometimes saying, oh, maybe it's worth it to just hold 4 goalies for a little while and see how things shake out. I feel like at this point, probably like I'll just say this, if Brian Elliott was dropped in any of my 3 leagues, I wouldn't be adding him right now. So maybe the other people in your leagues will feel the same way and you could like safely drop him. And then if, he starts heating up, if he starts even just getting starts, then you could consider re-adding him then. I guess it depends.
Yeah, so I'm saying if you have no other option, you need starts, go ahead for the Calgary Cuff. But there are few teams in the league this year, and we'll get to a couple surprising ones, Elon, from which I would less like to own a goalie. That was like a quadruple negative or some bizarre sentence construction. What I'm trying to say is that Calgary goalies, very undesirable, probably a bottom 5 team from which I'd like to own a goalie right now.
Yeah, Calgary goalies, like we weren't the only one.
Even more succinct.
Well, we're doing a live show here. Some people watching the video could get a little bonus out of watching live. We weren't the only ones, by the way, to get Brian Elliott wrong. Like you said, we had him maybe too high in our tier 4. We talked with Chris Wassel earlier this week, a fun bonus episode with him, and he was listing his top projection blunders of the season, and Brian Elliott was right on this list. A lot of people thought he was going to be really good. Definitely not happening. Okay, let's get out of Calgary. Let's go to Washington. Okay, I guess we're on the next tier of injuries now. At least we're not total star players, but still pretty significant guys. TJ Oshie is week to week with an upper body injury now, and he's quietly having an okay season. He has 12 points in 17 games played, which is a 58-point pace, nothing too shabby. And I guess this opens the door for Justin Williams to get back into the fold. He played with Backstrom and Johansson last game, was on the top power play with Backstrom and Ovechkin and Kuznetsov. Is it worth looking, though, at Justin Williams, who has only 3 points in 17 games played?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Is it worth looking at Justin Williams because he only has 3 points, even though he's on the top power play?
Can I just need a minute. I was foolish enough to not grab his line combos for the year to date.
Well, okay. He today played with Marcus Johansson and Nicholas Backstrom, and he also played on the top power play.
Today it's better, but like for the year.
Oh, for the year he's been in the bottom 6.
Playing with, all right, I got names.
Do it.
But you'd be having a bad year too if you were playing significant time with Lars Eller and Zachary Sanford. Not to say anything about Lars Eller, but that is not necessarily where you want to be if you want to collect points in the Washington lineup. And right now, I think you got to take a look at Williams. He's putting a few shots on goal in this new role. No points again today, but I think he had 3 shots. And he's had his moments last year in Washington as well, just like Oshie has in that top 6. The right side is thin enough that Williams could step up into Oshie's role, playing alongside Ovechkin and maybe Backstrom and Kuznetsov to make things happen. He won't be able to generate his own offense, but I still think he could be a complementary piece if he can keep up, because things move pretty quickly, and I'm not sure how great a skater he is these days. Another name to watch is Andrei Burakovsky, who can shift to the right side if needed, so perhaps he gets a boost if things with Williams really aren't working out.
Yeah, and then obviously another week goes by, another week with no points for Evgeny Kuznetsov. It's getting pretty ridiculous, right? Like he's at least, I mentioned in the podcast with Chris Wassel. What was it again? Wassel? I mentioned the podcast with Chris Wassel that he's at least now playing with Ovechkin. Like, so it's a pretty good situation to be in. So that top line today was Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and Andrei Burakovsky. So like you said, actually, it's a pretty good situation for Burakovsky taking the spot that Oshie used to hold, or at least I guess they've been shifting things around a bit this year. But yeah, still no points. We're up to 8 games with only 1 goal for Evgeny Kuznetsov in his last 8 games. So it's not looking good, but I at least like that now he's in a better situation and he's on that top power play, which he wasn't on before. So maybe if he was dropped in your league, I know it's crazy because I like already called him a potential snoozer last week and like he's done nothing but continue to snooze. But I almost feel like now it's more likely that he's been dropped in your league if it's a shallowish league, and maybe even if not at this point. So maybe now's the time to add him because he does have that upside. He did have almost a point per game last season, and he's back to playing with good line mates and on a really good power play.
Yeah, and speaking of that power play, Elon, shall you break the news or shall I?
I'm sad about this. John Karlsson apparently is off the top power play in Washington, at least in the last couple of games. Matt Niskanen took his job, and it's not good because I have Karlsson in two of my leagues. One of my leagues, Brian, in our joint league, we named our team keeping Karlsson, spelling both with C's because we couldn't have Erik Karlsson. At least we had John Karlsson. Man, like now he's not on the top power play. He only played 19 minutes and 36 seconds today. He was usually an above 20-minute defenseman. He had no points, 1 shots on goal, like 1 block today. Like John Karlsson is not contributing, and he hasn't been contributing pretty much all year. He has only 7 assists, no goals in 17 games this season. And, I thought, whatever, he'll be fine. He's still on the top power play. Now that he's not, I am very concerned. And also, side note, if Matt Niskanen is available, he had a power play assist today, and I would definitely grab him if you could, because he's on the top power play.
Yeah, and with that power play assist, he has half of Karlsson's total power play output. John Karlsson, I mean, you can't really fault him. Washington has scored 7 power play goals this year, or leading up to today anyway. He has assists on 2 of them. That's nothing to be ashamed of. But maybe what he's doing isn't working out right now. Maybe it's time for a shakeup. And a lot of people forget Matt Niskanen last year, 16 points on the power play, thanks to 16 games that John Karlsson spent out of the lineup, and Niskanen stepped in very capably in that absence. And actually the year before, even with a healthy Karlsson, Niskanen had 10 power play points. The year before he had 15, although that was in Pittsburgh. But the point is that he's done this before. He's shown that he is capable of rolling on that top power play unit. So if John Karlsson is doing something wrong, needs to relearn something or figure something out, they might take him off temporarily. One thing that I still am okay with about John Karlsson this year, though, is that he has no goals on 44 shots. He's averaging about 2.5 shots per game, and it's just not working out so far. So the shot generation is still coming. I would prefer if it came on the power play still. It's something to watch if you're a Karlsson owner and you need to double up on Niskanen really quickly. We'll see if this becomes a pattern and lasts another game or two, or if this was really just a temporary push.
Patty just wrote in the chat, great, now the whole league knows about Niskanen. Thanks, Elon. He just cost me money, I guess, for the fab bids for tomorrow in the Cacupful. Niskanen might be a bit higher now that we're letting people know. But yeah, I guess if you have John Karlsson, I wouldn't drop him yet. It's only been 2 games. We'll check in maybe next week or in a couple of weeks and see if the situation has rectified itself. If not, though, obviously he loses a ton of fantasy value, and I kick myself for drafting him so high in a couple of leagues. All right, we still have a lot more injuries. The rest of them that I'm going to mention, we don't really know how severe they are, so let's not get too deep into them. But like Bobby Ryan and Mike Hoffman are both injured in Ottawa. Buchnevich is injured currently in New York. Landeskog and Duchesne are both out. Apparently Duchesne might come back tomorrow for Colorado. Patrick Hornqvist has a concussion. Tomas Hertl is out. Actually, that one's looking like it's going to be a long-term injury, or I guess no, he got sent for an MRI. So who knows? I'll give you just a few random comments about some of these guys. Brian, you could feel free to add your own. So like in New York, with Buchnevich out, JT Miller was actually playing with Zibanejad and Zuccarello last game and also getting power play time. And this is a guy who's been doing great all year, right? He has 17 points in 18 games now. He has 2 goals and 2 assists in his last 4 games. And, last time we talked about him when he was doing like just as well, but we said, yeah, but he's like, not like on the best line and he's not getting power play time, so it probably won't last. Now he is getting some power play time. I don't know if it'll last, but it makes him even more appealing. Of course, probably he's already been taken in your league. He's like almost a point per game player so far. So I don't know if I could even ask you, Brian, if you would pick him up. But what do you think about JT Miller's production now? Before you said fleeting. Now do you think it's looking more sustainable?
I don't. I think it's still fleeting. He's definitely not a point per game player. On-ice shooting percentage is twice as high as it should be. And I don't even know that the Rangers have room for him in their top 6, even with Buchnevich out. And fantastic job on the pronunciation, by the way. Even if that guy doesn't come back into the lineup, doesn't come into the top 6 when he returns to the lineup, Jimmy Vesey is still kicking around, playing with Jesper Fast and Kevin Hayes right now. Maybe he gets back in the top 6. And if that's the case, JT Miller falls right back out. It's hard to imagine any depth Ranger really blowing past that 50-point mark with all the forward options they have available. It would be really nice if Miller could keep a 50-point pace from here on out. I'm just a little skeptical that, well, it's not going to be a shoo-in, in my opinion, and he's definitely not going to keep up the pace he's at now. So if you can convince anybody that he will, then sure, go ahead and try. A couple other Rangers to note. Michael Grabner is crushing it in even strength points scored. Top 10 in the league right now. Way to go. Or maybe top 15. I don't have the exact number in front of me. And also with Chris Kreider returning to the lineup, he's with Rick Nash and Derek Stepan since JT Miller is playing on what was his line before he was injured. And he's been doing okay there. Another goal tonight with those line mates. Stepan and Mark Stahl picking up the assists. He had 4 shots in his first game returning from injury, and looks like he's on track to get about that many tonight as well. Also, Brady Shea still looking nice in his production. Not a lot of shots on goal or really any peripherals. He gets 1 or 2 blocks, 1 or 2 hits most nights. Still in second power play unit, but we said we'd wait and see, be patient about him, and points are still coming up on the board. Not a lot of peripherals to keep that in mind, but it's nice.
Yeah, if you want a defenseman who's potentially going to give you assists, Brady Shea just gets assists like almost every game. It seems he has 2 more in his last 2 games. We'll see how he does today. Definitely someone to watch. So JT Miller, sounds like what you're saying, Brian, is if you could convince someone, if you have JT Miller right now, like do it. Why not? Try to convince them that you have someone who is just as good as, like, I don't even know, Mark Scheifele or Gabriel Landeskog. I'm just throwing out random names that are coming to my head right now. But, you know, maybe Scheifele would be tough to buy. But, you know, find some somewhat struggling player like Ryan Johansson. I don't know. Shoot for the sky. Who knows what the people in your league think about JT Miller, but he's definitely putting up production like an all-star. So see if you can swap him for one. Okay, I mentioned Hornqvist is out. The big beneficiary here is Chris Kunitz, who takes the spot on that awesome Pittsburgh top power play. He has 3 assists, including 2 on the power play in his last 2 games, while Hornqvist has been out. And the other thing to note is that with Hornqvist out, Carl Hagelin has gotten onto the top line, playing with Connor Sheary and, of course, Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, so Kunitz is in the spot vacated by Hornqvist, and it seems sensible and nice that Kunitz gets a shot there. Interestingly enough, he's his best rate stats of the last 3 years. The flip side of that coin, though, is that his minutes are down to depths that he hasn't seen since Pittsburgh acquired him from Anaheim for Ryan Whitney. Quick trivia break, Elon. Name the only other team that Chris Kunitz has played for.
Anaheim.
No, aside from Anaheim and Pittsburgh.
Oh. Pass.
Wrong. It was the Atlanta Thrashers.
Of course.
Who claimed him off of waivers, I think, from Anaheim, and then he played 2 games for them, and then was waived by Atlanta and reacquired by Anaheim, and then Anaheim eventually shipped him out for Ryan Whitney. Anyway, nice spot for Chris Kunitz for the time being.
Yeah, and he gets hits. So if you're obviously, like, Chris Kunitz is probably owning your league. So if you have him, you're just enjoying right now the extra power play time. Hornqvist will hopefully come back soon, and you know, then Kunitz will go back. I mean, he's still up, by the way, he's also on line 2 with Malkin and Kessel. So Kunitz is in a great situation right now. Like, most players would be putting up points in that situation. Anything else from these injuries? I guess, oh yeah, I wanted to say about San Jose with Tomas Hertl out. Yeah.
I had something to say about Kunitz, but it's too late.
Too late. Tomas Hertl out. He, of course, was playing with the Joes, Thornton and Pavelski. And so in San Jose's last game, San Jose's last game, Kevin LeBlanc started on line 1 with the Joes. I don't even know who that is. Brian, you could tell me if I should know who he is, but maybe not, though, because it looks like Marleau got some time there. So maybe Marleau ended up replacing LeBlanc on that top line. And if that's the case, that's pretty good. Like, we called him a snoozer last week, but if Patrick Marleau is playing with Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski, that's a great situation to be in, considering he's also still on the top power play. Speaking of San Jose, though, Pavelski and Burns are doing great, as expected, but Thornton actually only has 12 points in 18 games, which is a 54-point pace. So that's well below his almost point-per-game pace that he put up last year. And Logan Couture, only 9 points in 18 games. So I'm curious to know, I guess, your thoughts on what I just said about Marleau, and also if people should be worried about Thornton and Couture.
Okay, let's go in order of what you referenced them. Okay, let's go in the order that you reference players, or at least the way I remember it. First off, Kevin LeBlanc. The thing is, he's from Staten Island, but the name looks kind of French. So it's either LeBlanc or LeBanc or LeBanc. I don't know if it's any of those. Or it's LeBlanc. He comes from a French family. We don't need to spend too much time talking about it, except that his name translated means the bench, which I wonder if he'll be seeing more of that in the NHL. He certainly wasn't seeing it in the AHL. 10 points in 6 games in his first pro season with the San Jose Barracuda. No question why he was the first call-up for San Jose after really destroying the OHL last year with the Barrie Colts, although that happens often with people who don't have much of an NHL career. He was drafted in the 6th round in 2014. This is way too much time to be spending on Kevin L. So let's move on to Patrick Marleau, who was a snoozer last week. And 4 shots on goal in his last game versus Arizona was nice, but it won't change the fact that in my mind, he's still a snoozer. He's getting plenty of looks on the power play. Nothing's coming, though, so in my opinion, still snoozing. San Jose is actually currently amongst the weakest teams in shooting percentage at both even strength and on the power play, and I think this might contribute towards explaining away what is happening with Thornton and Couture. So maybe those guys are by low opportunities. You might think that Couture deserves a little more hesitation than Thornton, but the numbers actually favor more of a positive regression from Couture. Thornton's got just 16 shots in 18 games, which is low even for him, a guy who generally gets a shot and a half on average per game. Thornton's shot on goal and shot attempt rates this year are so far half of what they were last year. He's never been a big shooter, but I would still like to see those numbers a little healthier. With Hurdle out, I fear that things still won't get better for Thornton. I did tweet at Jacob Sundstrom over at Fear the Fin, and he said he's going to dig into it. So take a look at fearthefin.com and consider a future post that might be put up there about what exactly is happening with Joe Thornton's game. But I do still expect that however badly Thornton and Couture are playing right now, they're still both going to get better. And maybe I should be cutting Marleau a little more slack as well, though in my opinion, he has the lowest ceiling of the 3, and perhaps that's why I'm not cutting him so much slack. But if I had to rank them today, I would probably say, man, it's so hard to put Couture ahead of Thornton, so I can't do it. I'm going to say Thornton and Couture are closer than you think. There's reason to put Couture a little bit ahead of Thornton, and then a fair gap between both of them and Marleau.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to give Couture much credit right now when he has only a point in every 2 games. That's the ratio he's going. But like you say, hopefully some more shots will start going in soon. Obviously, you can't drop these guys. Joe Thornton also, he's old. Like at some point he's gonna have to slow down. Maybe this is the start of it. I don't see him being a point per, like he'll probably do a little better. Like right now, like I said, he's less than a 60-point pace. Maybe he could get like a 65, 70-point pace, but maybe we're now finally beyond the point when he's putting up near 80-point pace, or he'll maybe surprise us. Like he did actually start slow or had like a slow stretch last year. I remember the year before it might've been, but I think it was last year actually. Like he started really, there was one cold stretch where we talked on the podcast about like what's wrong with Thornton. And then next thing you knew, he like blew the league away and ended up with close to a point per game. Brian, let's take a little break before we talk about some happier news, maybe some outjuries and some players on hot streaks to end the show. Let's talk about our sponsor for this episode, Draft. We already know you love playing fantasy hockey because you listen to this podcast. So we know you'll love playing fantasy on Draft. Draft is a simple daily fantasy app where you can do snake drafts just like the one you do at the beginning of your season-long league. You can do drafts whenever you want. They last for just one day and they take only minutes to complete. On Draft, you can play for free or for money, and your chances of winning on Draft are over 200% better than your chances of winning on DraftKings or FanDuel, which, by the way, I read that they merged. So interesting news going on with DraftKings and FanDuel. Maybe I shouldn't be dropping news in the middle of an ad spot. But Brian, we did a head-to-head draft today on Draft, and I am destroying you. You had first overall pick, and you took Braden Holtby, who lost to Columbus. Then I went with Ovechkin, who had a goal, and then Ryan Getzlaf, who's still playing. Then, I don't know, you took a couple scrubs. I took Nicholas Backstrom, who had a goal and an assist. I picked up Dustin Byfuglien, who actually didn't do that well. He had 3 shots on goal, and I still have Lundqvist in today. I'm beating you. Like, I'm almost doubling you right now. I'm destroying you. Who's on your roster? John Karlsson, not even on the power play. Mark Scheifele, he scored a goal. That was good. Corey Perry and Blake Wheeler. Yeah, I'm going to win.
I loaded up on Jets against Cam Ward. I put my money where my mouth is, not caring that the Jets were on the road. And I'm getting burned in that one against you. I'm in a couple others. Again, you know, like snake drafting or just drafting in general is often like a highlight of your fantasy season. And every time you finish, you just want to do it again and again. And draft has that like addictive quality in a positive way where you can just snake draft as many times as you want, any day you want. and against one other person or two other people or three other people. So you should definitely, if you haven't, just check it out. Will you? Keep promo.
I haven't said. I'll say all that stuff.
Okay.
Will you? Won't you? Will you? When you download Draft, be sure to enter the promo code Karlsson. To download it, you could just search for Draft in the App Store and it will come up first. You can go to playdraft.com, or if you're in Canada and you use Android, it's not available in the Canadian Android store, but I've made a link for it. Go to keepingkarlsson.com/draftandroidca, and that will download the Android Canada app. Remember to enter the promo code Karlsson when you download so you can get an 100% deposit bonus. You deposit an amount of money, it doubles. And then you could maybe win a lot of money, get rich. Okay, that's Draft. It's really great. Check it out. Brian, I want to switch now to some outjuries, some happy news. Hey, some other happy news here in the chat room. I'm seeing Dougie Hamilton got an assist. So there you go. It's starting. Don't trade Hamilton for Anthony D'Angelo after all. Maybe there's some life there. But okay, some players have come back. Patrick Sharp and Jason Spezza and Cody Eakin have all returned for Dallas this week. They're almost fully healthy. They don't have Yuri Hoodler, but really at this point, like, who cares? I guess they don't have Ales Hemsky, whatever. Sharp has played one game so far versus Edmonton. He had no goals, no assists, 2 shots on goal. He wasn't even on the top power play. I thought that Patrick Eaves and Roussel would get bumped back with Spezza and Sharp coming back, but yesterday the top power play was Benn, Seguin, Spezza, Eaves, and Klingberg. So Patrick Eaves still has value. I'm like pretty surprised, and that's really great for Patrick Eaves owners that Sharp didn't bump him off the top power play. The regular lines have been, at least in the last game, Seguin, Benn, and Eaves. Eaves again, Spezza, Devin Shore, and Cody Eakin, and then Sharp, Roussel, and Faxa. So yeah, clearly the winner with all of these outjuries in Dallas has been Patrick Eaves, who stays on the amazing line in power play. He has 10 points in his last 8 games, 15 points in 18 games on the season. And when people were asking about him before, I was saying, well, yeah, take him now, but he's probably going to get dropped when Sharp comes back. But right now, he's looking good. Is there any reason not to add him at this point, Brian? Like, I missed my chance in all 3 of my leagues, maybe kicking myself a little bit. He has a career high, though, of only 32 points. Looks, though, like he's missed a lot of time over the past few seasons. Like, he's gotten on good runs and then got injured. So if he stays healthy, is he a threat for a career year? Or do you think he's, like, eventually just going to get bumped down and he's going to slow down and it's not worth giving up too much for him?
Here are the players that you've asked me that question about since starting the podcast, and this is just an abbreviated list. Valerie Nichushkin, Patrick Sharp, Patrick Eaves, Ales Hemsky, Colton Sevier, Dallas Eakin, Brett Ritchie. They've all had their turn on that top line in recent years. And now the good news for Eaves is that he, Patrick Sharp, Cody Eakin, and Brett Ritchie are the only ones remaining of that group, with Hemsky out of an injury, Sevier over in Florida, Nichushkin in the KHL. So on one hand, that's positive. On the other hand, there's still 4 people to revolve through that door. Maybe Eaves gets a continued look because things are clicking for him right now, but I can't imagine that that's a permanent situation for him, especially if, say, Patrick Sharp is struggling and the Stars want to try and get him going. So, as is the case with all of these guys from 3 years ago until the end of time, they're all great on first line, and they are totally meh when they're anywhere else. So for now, go ahead and pick up Eaves if you have a cycle spot in your roster. Even if you don't, like if you have a bottom spot, the same way you might have added Marchessault earlier in the season, this is if he's still available in your league. But do be prepared to jettison him at some point.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. For me, I always just kind of feel like it's different this time, but I guess I've thought that many times before. But definitely Patrick Eaves has been amazing for anyone who picked him up at some point, deciding, what the hell, I'll just add him for a little bit. By the way, so Patrick Sharp, is he like a snoozer at this point? He only now has 1 assist in 4 games played. Or no, I guess now what? Snoozer at this point? He only had 1 assist in 4 games played before his injury. And like I said, he came back and did nothing in his last game. He's not on a good line. He's not on the top power play. You know, we've already talked about some guys you might want to pick up, and we're going to talk about some more. Is Patrick Sharp someone that you could consider dropping at this point? Or is it like, no, you have to hold on because he still has the potential to get like 50, 60 points and a ton of shots?
I think it would be a little preemptive to drop a 55-plus point guy from last year after seeing 4 games of him and then 1 back and then 1 more right after he returned from injury. This is a guy, again, 55 points in 76 games last year, 226 shots, 24 power play points. It's too soon to give up on a guy like that. You got to give him another 8 to 10 games to see what happens if you can hold off. The good news, though, is if he's already a free agent in your league, I don't know that anybody's going to be rushing to get him. So you can be the first to get dibs if you count. So you can be the first to get dibs. You just have to pick your moment. And now might not be that moment, to be fair.
Yeah, I think probably you want to be like checking out the line combinations at Dapper Hockey or somewhere. Follow the Dallas beat writers when it gets announced that Sharp is going to be going on the top line and or the top power play. That's your moment when you add him. Don't wait for the points to come because you know they'll come if and when he's there. I guess I have to mention Antoine Roussel. I brought him up before. He went on a 7-game point streak recently while Sharp and Spezza were injured. He was seeing time on the top power play, which of course helped. But now I think it's time to drop him. If you had him, he has no points, no shots in his last 2 games. Like I said, he's off the top power play. He's playing on a line with Sharp for what it's worth. Wait, was it? He's playing with line with Sharp. Yeah, for what it's worth. So yeah, thank Antoine Roussel for his services and then drop him from your team. And I guess I'll mention Jason Spezza, 2 power play assists in his last 2 games. So he looks to be getting back on track to giving his owners a solid season of production, we should hope. Also, like I said, on that top power play. And with that, let's go to some more outjuries in Arizona. Martin Hanzal and Mike Smith, both back for the Coyotes. 2 guys who I'm sure will get injured again at some point, as they both always tend to do. But nice to see them both back. Hanzal, great return. He has a goal and 2 assists in 3 games since returning. Both of his assists were on the power play. He had 5 hits and 3 shots yesterday against San Jose, and he's back on the top line in the power play with Verbata and Max Domi. And I feel like all 3 of these guys should be owned in like pretty much all formats. Like Domi is probably already owned, and Verbata still not owned in a lot of leagues, and he has 12 points in 17 games. Domi has 13. So both are having great years. Verbata had 9 shots against Vancouver a couple of games ago. And like I said, Hansel's good. So I really like these guys. And I feel like we called it, Brian, a little bit. Maybe we weren't the only ones, but we were thinking that Verbata was going to have a chance to rebound after that brutal year in Vancouver last year. And so far looking great. By the way, speaking of that game against San Jose, where Verbata had 9 shots, Mike Smith was amazing, stopping 43 of 45 shots for the 3-2 win. He also only let in 2 goals versus Calgary in his first game back from injury. So I feel like Mike Smith is right back on track. I assume if you have Louis Domingue, it's time to drop him unless you have value in having a backup goalie on Arizona. I don't think Domingue did anything to like necessarily say like that job should be his or he should be in a timeshare. I think Mike Smith is the number 1 guy. And like, Brian, do you think he can be a league average goalie this year? He's had a few rough seasons lately, but last year he was pretty solid, 916 save percentage, and he's up to a 922 save percentage this year in only 4 games played. What do you think about Mike Smith?
He's been below average in even strength save percentage for the last few years, but closer to average when you look at the context-based numbers like adjusted goals saved above average per 60 minutes or Mercad, as we've also called it. He had a better year last year than Domingue did. He turns 35 this year and is not an ideal goalie option for your fantasy team, but I think he might be the best option that Arizona has between him and Arizona has. And going back to their top line, Elon, I think they're one of the most undeservedly overlooked top lines in fantasy. So many of these guys are available. And if you were one of the people who got super excited about Zajac, as you should have, I wonder if Hanzal and Verbata and maybe even Domi were sitting available in your free agent pool at the same time. I have Hanzal in a couple leagues. I picked him up after the draft, kept him stashed after he came back from injury, and I missed some of his production when he came back from it. It's easy to get down on him because he's inevitably going to get injured and make a mess of your lineup. But when he's healthy and playing with Verbata and Domi at even strength and on the power play, I think you're looking at a 55-point pace from him for starters. And also from his line mates, I don't think that's unreasonable. Verbata is another guy who's a free agent in a lot of leagues and should be owned. He's top 50 in the league right now in all situations, points per 60 minutes, and is behind a lot of people with less sustainable shooting percentages than he has. So the whole top line in Arizona should be owned in your league. Go check right now. Check your free agency pool and see if any one of them happen to still be out there.
Yeah, if you're watching live, maybe wait till after the show, or you could go check. You could multitask, or if you're listening, you could pause the podcast, take a look. Also take a look if Anthony D'Angelo, like I said, if he's there, because he's still putting up points. Like I said, we brought him up last week. He's now up to 4 points in 6 games played. 3 of those points are on the power play. And I feel like while he's on the top power play with Domi, Hanzal, Verbata, and a guy named Oliver Ekman-Larsson, that's a pretty good option also. So definitely he should not be a free agent if you have a spot to cycle someone in. Okay, let's go now to Detroit. Thomas Vanek is back today. Actually, he's in the middle of a game right now, and currently he has no points. It's 1-1 between Detroit and Calgary. And Vanek, what does he has for 2 shots? Well, whatever. It's like partway through the game. If he could get 4 shots, that's actually a pretty good game. If he could double that. Chad Johnson, by the way, up to only 1 goal against and 11 saves. So putting in another decent performance. I wonder how many of those shots Brian Elliott would have let in if he was in the net. Anyway, Thomas Vanek. He had been having a really good year before he got injured. He had 8 points in 7 games played, which is fantastic. You know, aside from him, I feel like, is there even anyone to get excited about in Detroit right now for offense? Like Zetterberg has 11 points in 18 games, which isn't that great. It's okay. 7 in his last 8, though. So he's solid enough. Okay, Henrik Zetterberg, yeah, if you have him, he's good. Mike Green picks up an assist every now and then. He takes a good number of shots. So I'd say, okay, like he's good. Aside from those guys, we're really not seeing anything lately from Nyquist, Tatar, Larkin, Franz Nielsen, Cronwall on defense. Like, are you holding out hope for any of these guys at this point, or can they all be free agents? Like, Brian, I guess I'm asking you, like, is there any one of those Detroit guys I just mentioned that you would want if you saw them in free agency? Like Dylan Larkin, he has 6 points in 18 games played. I'm pretty sure I made a bet with one of the patrons going to the season that was saying Dylan Larkin was going to get like 60 plus points. And I said, I don't think so. Maybe more like 40 or 45. Maybe we were both wrong and he's going to be like 20, which is what it's looking like right now.
Okay, let's not go crazy. Dylan Larkin is going to get more than 20 points this year. I know you know that, but it is a different situation from other teams where we've asked, why is everybody struggling, like San Jose and like Ottawa? Because they had team-wide low shooting percentages when we're used to expecting better. But Detroit doesn't have the same validity. They're right in the middle of the pack. So you wonder, what's the problem if the team on average is shooting okay? They're dead last in the league. Is shooting okay. And the reason that things are not okay in Detroit is because they're dead last in the league in shot attempts per 60 minutes. If you give them the benefit of adjusting for score effects, they rise all the way up to 28th in the league. Things are not awesome right now in Detroit. In the last 6 games, only Henrik Zetterberg has managed to score more than 2 points, and only Dylan Larkin is averaging more than 2.5 shots on goal per game, though Gustav Nyquist not too far behind. I feel like Nielsen, Larkin, and Tatar should all be able to pick up their games a little bit. Nyquist as well, though maybe our continued hopes for his breakout will be stayed for yet another year. This is just a team that we're seeing really struggle with weak defense, with, well, not unreliable goaling. We'll get to that in a second. But also without their glue for the last several years in Pavel Datsyuk. I think he had a huge impact. I know, but I think on the ice and off the ice. So I don't think there's any reason to rush out to grab anyone other than Henrik Zetterberg at the moment, which is what I managed to do a week or so ago at just the right time. Thank goodness. But there's a lot of reasons to remain unenthusiastic about any of these struggling Red Wings.
Yeah. And so what do you think about Vanek? Do you think that you would grab him if he's available? Or like, I don't even know. I don't even have such high hopes for him. Like, he had a great start to the year, but I'd like to see him do it again now that he's back from injury.
He was exceeding net front on the power play, so if he can get back into that position and do well there, that's good news for him. But his shooting percentage was like 24% when he got injured, so I'm not really sure you can expect him to continue the pace that he was on.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Very disappointing, all of these Detroit guys. Okay, one guy, like you said, we have to get to it. I don't know, maybe you don't want to, Brian, but I don't know, maybe you were wrong, maybe not. Like, are you ready to admit defeat on Jimmy Howard? Like, we talked about him like a couple of weeks ago already, or maybe 3 weeks ago, where I was saying, wow, Jimmy Howard's gotten like 2 starts in a row, 3 starts in a row. Maybe he's going to end up taking the job from Mrazek, or at least being 50-50. And you were like, nah, Jimmy Howard sucks. Like, Mrazek's the guy. He's better. All right, now at this point, Jimmy Howard has played 5 of Detroit's last 6 games. He's playing today against Calgary in this game that's currently 1-1. He has a .945 save percentage on the season so far compared to Peter Mrazek's lowly .901. It's like, obviously at this point too late for anyone to get Howard as a free agent because he's been added in probably all leagues, which would make sense. But I'm curious to know if you still think it'll be Mrazek's job, or are you seeing something like unsustainable in Howard's numbers? Like, is Mrazek a snoozer at this point? Do people drop Mrazek? Like, I guess you're going to probably say no, Howard sucks, but I'm going to be curious to see why.
I don't know what to do with Peter Mrazek. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how long this Howard run is going to last, but I do know that it's going to end at some point. I do know that there is a finite stretch of time for which Jimmy Howard will be putting up these numbers. Yes, he's number 1 now, which is why if you own Mrazek, sort of throw your hands up in the air and try and figure out when this is going to end. because Howard's numbers are not sustainable. He has a 983 medium danger save percentage this year. Compare that to 933 and 917, 923 in the last 3 years. So way above the previous 3 years. And this high danger save percentage has a similarly high jump at this point in the year. He's got an 846 save percentage against high danger chances compared to last year's 796, the year before 786, the year before 822. So that's a little closer, but still that's the high water mark. And he's still a fair amount above that. So regression will come, but until it does, he has been crushing it. I'll give him credit for what he's been doing. He's been crushing it long enough to be rightfully considered the number one in Detroit. And here's the rub for me. Potentially also considered a number one by his fantasy owners. There's a patron in the group who I was encouraging to try and get Quick in some other deal. And I was like, do you think you can get Quick as part of this trade? And the patron responded, well, actually, the team I'm trading with has Jimmy Howard, and they think he's a number one goalie for the rest of the year. So maybe this is an opening to get Jonathan Quick. And that's my advice to anybody who does not own Howard, is to find the Howard owner, find them in their complacency about this goalie situation that they've stumbled into, and try and nab one of their legitimate starters who might be struggling at the moment.
That is, yeah, we've never really come up with that strategy before. I like that. So when a goalie's doing well that you think is unsustainable, go and try to trade for one of their other goalies, especially if you could find one that's struggling. Like, I don't know, Henrik Lundqvist had a bad game a couple of games ago. Maybe you could try to pry him away. Like, who knows? Who knows what these people who don't listen to Karlsson, who knows these people who aren't listening to Keeping Karlsson are thinking? Like, there's no way to know. They're too weird. But yeah, I mean, Jimmy Howard, like the thing is you used to think he was good, and then he had a couple of bad seasons, and now you think he's not good. I guess, I'm not saying you're wrong for sure. I guess you want to see more before you're going to be convinced to change your mind. But, so far so good. And I just really have a hard time imagining Peter Mrazek becoming the starter again. Like maybe it could be 50-50.
Yeah, so I think the unique aspect of this goalie performing well, it's not like, I don't know, Carter Hutton coming in St. Louis and having a few good games. Detroit is a team without a number one goalie. Nobody thinks now that Peter Mrazek is the number one goalie. So you can easily convince somebody that they have Jimmy Howard. They're set for the year. And as to Elon, I know you think I'm stubborn about not changing my mind. Jimmy Howard has played 9 games this year with a 945 save percentage. So great for him. Over the course of his 384 game career, a 915 save percentage. The last 3 years, he's been like a 909 goalie on average, had a couple good years before that. And I did take a long time to give up on him. It's going to take me just as long to get back on board, especially at 945. Like if he was at 920 or even like 918, I might be a little more interested in saying, yeah, this is sustainable. We're going to see this last. But alas, that's not what I see.
Brian.
But alas, that's not what I see. But that's not what I see. I see something insanely high. I know that's counterintuitive, though. I think that might be a bias that I need to fix in my evaluation methods.
Why can't you just say, like, that's crazy. If he was doing worse, you'd be more confident in him moving forward. It's like, why can't you just say that he's a 945 right now? Maybe he's more like a 918. I think that's reasonable. I wouldn't be like, if he's 918, that means he could probably stay a 918. But if he's a 945, that means he's going to fall to like an 890.
No, I'm not saying he's going to swing so hard back the other way. I'm just saying what we're seeing now is clearly not Jimmy Howard. And the number that tells us that, especially, oh no, I already went through those. What we're seeing right now is clearly not the Jimmy Howard we can expect. A 918, 920 Jimmy Howard, maybe I could get on board with. 945, I can't.
Okay, but because I feel like if you're saying that you could see him being a 918, 920 goalie, that's good. That means he's good.
I'm not saying I can see him doing that. I'm saying if he was doing that, I'd find that a little easier to swallow.
Oh my God. Okay, tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. If anyone else is with me in how crazy this sounds, let me know, because
I'm going to grant you, like, I know I'm talking crazy right now. Like, I know it doesn't make sense. If I could come up with a better analogy on the fly. I don't know. I know there's a bit of like fallacious thinking involved in how I'm evaluating this right now, but I'm still, bottom line, I'm not a believer in Jimmy Howard yet. I'm keeping an open mind, but 945 over 9 games does not erase his last 200 games of sub mediocrity.
All right, fine. Okay. Well, let's just move on from that. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Okay, let's go to another outjury on another team that has a goalie that Brian thinks sucks, even though he's been doing well lately. Let's go to Carolina. Justin Falk has returned. He had nothing to show for his first 2 games back, aside from some shots and some hits and blocks. He had a power play assist today. So, I don't know. We already talked about him last week. Maybe he's not the 50-plus point fantasy stud that maybe some of us were expecting at one point, but he's good. He takes shots. He gives you those peripherals, and I'm sure he's going to get at least 40, like a 40-point pace. Maybe he could approach 50. Brian does deserve some credit. Sticking with Carolina, you called Toivo Teravainen. You name-checked him right at the end of last show saying, watch him. He's been shooting more lately, and man, he had a great week. He had a goal and 3 assists in 3 games. He had a great week. 3 games ago, he had a goal and 3 assists against Washington. Then he had a goal Friday against Montreal. Today, Teravainen had another power play assist. So he's been great. And a lot of it is because he's on the top line with Victor Rask and Elias Lindholm. And Victor Rask, by the way, 3 goals, 1 assist in his last 4 games played, and that's actually not including today. And he had a power play goal today. So, he had that 4-game pointless streak after that amazing scoring streak to start the year. Now he's on another scoring streak, or at least putting up a good number of points. So I really like Victor Rask. Brian, do you have anything to say about any of these skaters on Carolina before we get into Cam Ward?
Just that Rask he's the real standout of that group at even strength. Lindholm and Teravainen still have work to do, but yeah, they're worth being on your radars for cycling in or injury replacements, or I guess Teravainen is proving to be worth a little bit more than that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that, if you have a spot right now I guess we'd have to think of the list. Like Justin Williams or Toivo Teravainen. I'm currently going Toivo, even though Williams is the one on the top power play on Washington. Okay, you don't have to comment on that. Okay.
Do you want me to?
Well, if you could just say who you like between Williams and Teravainen. Like people are thinking, right. They're listening. They're like, oh, they've mentioned all these guys to maybe add. Which one should I add?
Teravainen.
Well, I'm probably gonna edit out that part. So can you say it in a sentence?
I guess between Williams and Teravainen, I'll lean ever so slightly towards Teravainen, although I think Washington's going to score more goals. I'm just a little more assured of Teravainen's place on his team.
Yeah, Teravainen's also a guy, when he was called up originally on Chicago, we had high hopes for him. I remember you were saying he was a top prospect that we can expect points from. It didn't come in Chicago. Maybe finally it's going to happen here in Carolina. He had a slow start, but things are clicking for him now. All right, let's get into it. Let's just argue again. I'm not going to argue with you because it's not even like I disagree, but it's just so fun to point out to you when these goalies that you don't like end up doing well. And Cam Ward has been amazing lately. You lost our draft competition because you loaded up on players playing against him. He has a .923 save percentage over his last 10 games played. So this isn't just a couple of games. Obviously, it's not a full season. He has a 3-game winning streak. And actually, these numbers I'm telling you don't include today. So I guess it's a 4-game winning streak now. He shut out the Sharks a couple of games ago. Brian, are you regretting dropping Cam Ward in the cupful? I know you did that early on to hold on to Eddie Lack, who you since also dropped, of course, because he's the worst. But do you think that Cam Ward is just going to end up being bad again moving forward and kind of the same as the Jimmy Howard treatment? If you could sell high on him right now, go for it.
Well, now that you said he has 4 good games in a row, that's really impressive. And maybe I should change my mind. The last time he's had a run like this, I don't even know. Just before the show, I was quickly rolling through game logs of his for the last 3 years and was never seeing him string together more than 2 or 3 quality starts at a time. Even with a break of a game or 2 in between, there was still not a lot of sunshine in his numbers. This year, he's done something new. Good for him. At even strength, he's not even playing completely out of his mind. Still better than usual. .924 at even strength so far this year compared to the .915 that he's been used to putting up over the last few years. Where he's seeing the biggest bump is on the penalty kill. He is second in all of the NHL in short-handed save percentage with a .925 in that situation, behind only Jake Allen, if you're curious. For context, though, that .925, Cam Ward has been in the range of .840 to .885 in shorthanded save percentage over the last few years. And this isn't even just a Cam Ward thing. Only 3 goalies finished above an .893 in that category last year. So I'm going to say sell high. I do have regrets of dropping him just as this run was starting. That is a shame. I'm sorry I missed out on all of it. but at the same time, I'm not going to regret whoever I ended up getting on my roster in the meantime is probably if he's staying. But at the same time, I'm not going to regret dropping him in like a month or two by my own estimation.
All right, that's fair. So if he was a free agent in the couple right now, would you be making a bid for him tomorrow? It sounds like no.
If I needed a goalie start, yeah, I just feel like with Howard, this could collapse at any moment.
Okay, so pick one. Who do you like better, Howard or Cam Ward?
Well, it's hard because my rule of thumb is to stay away from goalies whose names end in WARD. So I'd really like to choose neither of them. I used to like Brian Hayward, but that's just because he played for Montreal and shared my first name. I don't think he was all that great himself. If I had to choose one, like you should leave that silence in there. That is me really. I'm frustrated because Cam Ward stinks and Jimmy Howard isn't much better. But Jimmy Howard at least has somebody ready to push him for that number one job. I'm sort of giving up on Eddie Lack in Carolina. So maybe I go with Cam Ward as somebody who's likely to see more starts the rest of the way, even after he crumbles.
Brian, this is like even like just puts more of a point on how down you are on Jimmy Howard that you would even take Cam Ward over him. Like you're crazy. Jimmy Howard is really good.
Jimmy Howard is doing great, but what about my reasoning was that he's got a stronger backup. Do you not agree?
Yeah, but I think Cam Ward is someone who we've seen in the past like blows up your stats all the time. Jimmy Howard like hasn't been so bad. I don't know. Okay, I would take Jimmy Howard of the two. Okay. By the way, in the chat room, Dave just wrote Zook in big capital letters, which I assume means that Zuccarello scored. And I'm taking a look, and it's assisted. Oh, actually, he had an assist. Oh, come on, Dave. You don't need to go capital letters for an assist. But it was a goal by Zibanejad, assisted by Zuccarello and Jimmy Vesey. So
wow,
already...
Elon. This is all really compelling, listening the day after this game is over, that Zuccarello got an assist.
Brian, I have a point I'm going to make, which is this goes back to what we were talking about with JT Miller, who was on that line. And you were saying, I was trying to just give you a compliment and say you were already right that Jimmy Vesey clearly has gotten on to that line. And so, yeah, already it's looking like the Rangers are shuffling things around and JT Miller is back.
Oh, okay. In that case, I'm really glad you brought it up. And I think I would like a redo. I'll take Jimmy Howard, I guess, because I just feel like I'm going to drop either one at some point. So for now, give me Jimmy Howard.
Okay. And yeah, so today the lines for the Rangers, by the way, if you're curious, just to put a bow on that, have been Kreider, Nash, and Stepan, and then Vesey, Zibanejad, and Zuccarello, and then Grabner, Hayes, and JT Miller. And it looks like JT Miller is also off the top power play. Jimmy Vesey's back there. So, Brian, you have sage advice, unless you're talking about Jimmy Howard. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Let's go on to some hot streaks before we end the show. Andrei Markov. What? Where did this come from? He was pointless yesterday against Toronto, and that ended a 7-game point streak. He now has 14 points in 19 games on the season, tied for second in defenseman points with the likes of Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, Duncan Keith, and Kevin Shattenkirk, and he's only 1 point behind teammate Shea Weber. He's back to getting top power play time, and you know what? There was a point in this season where he was off the top power play and not getting many points after, I guess, like 5 or 6 games. I was considering dropping him in the cupful. I was offered a trade of Alex Goligoski for him, which I was very, very close to accepting. I'm really glad I didn't. I don't even have a question for you. I just wanted, how could I not mention this Andrei Markov hot streak? Do you have anything to say about him?
Yeah, a fair bit, actually. His even strength shot attempts, unblocked shot attempts, and shots on goal per 60 minutes are all up around his most recent high watermark that he set back in 2014. That's a year that he finished with 50 points. His numbers in that season and this one so far, definitely his most productive going back at least 10 years. Now, you might be looking through his career numbers right now if you're really fast on your phone while you listen to the podcast. And you're saying, hey, Brian, his best 2 seasons were within those last 10 years, in 2007, 2008, and the next year in 08, 09, he had 58 and 64 points in those seasons respectively. And I will say, yes, you're absolutely right. But those points didn't come on the strength of his 5-on-5 production. They came on the power play. He had 32 power play points in the first year of that, and 39 power play points in the second year of that. In fact, those were middle years of a run where for 4 straight years, 32 power play points was his floor. But now that Shea Weber is the trigger man on the power play, those way huge over 50 point days are all but out of reach. So it would be nice to see him with this bump in even strength production, still getting to 50. That's what he did with PK Subban in the lineup 2 years ago when he was doing this well at even strength. And if he stays part of this successful Habs power play, that should help him on his way there. He really is doing the work, though, at even strength. 6 goals on 24 shots so far. That gives him a shooting percentage actually about twice as high as it should be. But after a rough start to the season, he seems to be a near sure thing for 45, even with that slightly inflated shooting percentage.
Right. Yeah. Like Dave in the chat room is saying when I said, like, what do I even have to ask you about Markov? Like, he's like, sell high on Markov. Are you serious? Like, yeah. Okay. If there's someone who thinks that he could be like a 60, 70 point defenseman or whatever pace he's on now, and if you could sell him for like, I don't know, I actually tried to make an offer for Roman Josi, which got quickly rejected. But like, yeah, if you could make a trade like that, go for it. But I think you're right, Brian, that there's no reason to think he can't get between 45 and 50 points, just like he has been doing the last couple of seasons. I was worried about him getting dropped off the top power play, but if he could stay there, yeah, why not? Especially since he's been good at getting the even strength points as well. Okay, on to Vancouver. Brandon Sutter has scored a goal in 4 straight games now. And this is a name that we bring up every once in a while. One of the many non-Sedin Vancouver players that we, mention. They're doing well, then they disappear. But Brian, let me tell you, not only has Brandon Sutter been scoring goals, but he's been on the top line in the top power play with the Sedins. So it's not Eriksson. It's not whoever else, has been having a chance there. Lately, it's been Brandon Sutter, and it is working. Like, there's no reason to think they should drop him from there anytime soon. Like I said, he's on the top line with the Sedins. He's been on the top power play, getting all of these goals, like taking a good number of shots. Is Brandon Sutter a must-add right now?
Yeah, he is. Must add while he's there for sure. We liked what he was doing earlier in the year as well. So if there's something we've learned about Brandon Sutter this year, it's that he's capable of catching our attention. The question is he capable of maintaining it? I'll say he's worth a hard look for your roster, but with the usual Sedins or bust caveat. So if he's not with the Sedins, then forget it. But while he's with them, he's doing a fantastic job of hanging with them. Also, Elon, I'm going to beat you to the punch. Troy Stecher. I love Troy Stecher. Since we're talking about the Canucks, I feel like I just need to add that in. I love him. I love him taking shots. I would love him even more if they went in. But he's had 5 consecutive games with 3 or more shots on goal. He was actually bumped up. He was actually bumped off of the top power play last game for Ben Hutton, who did pick up a power play assist. And incredibly, that was just the 4th power play point picked up by any Vancouver defenseman so far this year. I wonder how many Washington has. I'm sorry I didn't check that before the show just to compare. Hutton is 30th in the league in power play points per 60 minutes amongst defensemen who have seen 25 or more minutes with the man advantage. Edler, Larson, and Stecher all below him at the bottom. So I wonder if Ben Hutton gets a short look now because that worked. Granted, remember that Dustin Byfuglien, Mark Giordano, Drew Doughty, Brett Burns, they're all somehow lower than Edler and Larson in power play points per 60 minutes right now. Another thing to keep in mind with Stecher, he doesn't get many other peripherals, so likely not worth your while if his shots on goal aren't going to do it for you. But keep him in mind, and I'm pretty sure you'll thank me one day, maybe a couple years down the road.
Well, okay. Troy Stecher, sure. Back to Brandon Sutter, though. I'm too excited about him to just totally derail this to Troy Stecher. Yeah, the shots are really good. He had 21 shots in his last 5 games played. That's amazing. So I guess before we had Tara Vinen above Justin Williams, how about Brandon Sutter versus Tara Vinen? Who would you take as the top FA of the show so far?
I'll stick with Tara Vinen for the same reason I took him over Williams. Once Sutter is off the top line, he is nothing.
Well, I mean, whatever. I feel like when you're picking up a bottom free agent like this, you're doing it for the short term. Assuming, let's say you have enough ads that you could keep him for a week and then drop him, would that change your mind?
It's really hard to recommend anyone on Vancouver, but it's also pretty hard to recommend anyone on Carolina for the amount of goals they score. I'm going to go Brandon Sutter. At least he's going to get you those shots.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I'll still take Tara Vinen, even though I just pushed you to change your mind. Okay. By the way, Dave in the chat, lots of great comments from Dave here. By the way, anyone listening, you could join us live every week if you want. We always go live at 8 p.m. You just go to keepingkarlsson.com/live and it'll direct you to the live YouTube show. Dave asking if you should offer Markov to the struggling John Karlsson owner. That might be a trade that you could pull off, especially with Karlsson off the top power play. The question is, who would you want? I don't know who I would want.
Well, I think Dave already declined the potential trade of you offering him your Markov for his Karlsson.
Oh, okay. I don't even know if I would make that trade if Carlson's going to be off the top power play. I guess we assume he'll get back there, but if he were to not be there, I would take Markov on the power play versus Carlson off. Maybe that's going to sound really stupid in a couple of weeks. I guess if any of you Markov owners want to try to trade for Carlson, it's not like a crazy move to make. That would be very interesting. Brian, you didn't give an answer.
By design.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know who I'd prefer. I want Karlsson if he's on the top power play unit, and I think that whole power play needs to get going. It's not his fault. It's not working. So I guess I would prefer John Karlsson.
yeah, he'll probably get back there. He had so much value, but maybe you could even get Carlson plus something extra for Markov the way things have been going. Maybe that's what my answer will be. Like try to squeeze as much out of the Karlsson owner as you can. Okay, let's go to Toronto. Got to mention JVR and Mitch Marner, who both had themselves quite the amazing weeks. They couldn't get anything by Carey Price yesterday, but their line centered by Tyler Bozak has been on fire lately. Toronto creamed Nashville 6-2 and Florida 6-1 this week. And like JVR had 3 goals and assists versus Nashville, a goal and assist versus Florida, and Marner right there with him, goal, 2 assists versus Nashville, a goal versus Florida. JVR and Marner are now leading the Leafs in points with 17 and 16 points respectively in 18 games. Brian, at the beginning of the season, you called Marner to lead Leafs rookies in points, and then you backed off of that prediction when Matthews and Nylander, scratch that, Matthews and Nylander started so hot. Do you want to go back on that now? Now do you want to switch back to saying you think it's going to be Mitch Marner?
Did I totally walk it back completely? I think I was saying it was a little quixotic of me, perhaps, to go with Marner over Matthews, but I still think I stuck with it. Of course, I'd like to think that was the case. He's been so good, right? JVR and Marner. There's actually three Toronto Maple Leaf players in the top 6 right now in even strength points per 60 minutes. Elon, can you guess the third? It's JVR, Marner, and...
Wait, so there's 3 players that are what?
3 Maple Leafs in the top 6 in the whole league right now in even strength points per 60 minutes.
Oh, so who's the third? I don't know, Kadri?
Tyler Bozak.
Oh, I should have guessed. They're centermen.
Right, yeah, they all play together, so it stands to reason. JVR and Marner, though, are unique in that they are 4th and 7th, respectively, in total points scored at even strength this year. What's more impressive about their point totals is that they each have just 3 power play points. So they're looking really good and everyone's getting really excited. And I love them both. And I hope they can both hit 60 points. But if you own one of these guys, their value is so high right now. You've got to make an effort to find someone in your league who thinks they're going to top 60 points. Then start talking to those guys and see what 65 plus point guys that you can get. And see what 65 plus point guys you can get back for them.
All right, maybe you could just help us a little bit. Like, what's a name that you think you could try to ask for in exchange for JVR?
I feel like anyone on the Predators, Philip Forsberg, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah, or Neil. Yeah, that's a good point. That would be a pretty nice trade for you to make. Okay, I guess since we're on Toronto, I'll also mention Morgan Riley. He's up to 11 points in 18 games and is finally getting that power play time that we were so like, why doesn't Morgan Riley get on the power play? Now he has, so he's good now. Like, definitely grab him if he's a free agent for some reason. If he was dropped because people thought, he doesn't even get power play time, what's the point? Okay.
Yeah, who would you prefer now, Elon, Riley or Zaitsev?
Wait, can you ask again? Because I started talking when you started.
Yeah, who would you prefer now, Elon, Riley or Zaitsev?
Oh, Riley for sure. Zaitsev's been pretty quiet. Like, I'm very happy. I don't know if you listeners remember going into the season, I had this like my last defense spot in the cacuffle, and I had Zaitsev, and then the last minute I decided to switch him for Zach Werenski. That was definitely one of the smartest moves I've made, and I definitely have to thank Peter Harling for the interview I did with him where he suggested that I make that swap. Okay, Brian, next hot streak guy, Marian Hossa. He's having a dream season right now. He's scored a goal in 6 of his last 7 games. He's up to 17 points in 18 games on the season, which, by the way, is good for only 4th on the Blackhawks. You're almost at a point per game, and you could only get 4th behind Patrick Kane, Artemi Panarin, and Artem Anisimov. I think that Hossa is going to be passing Anisimov soon because he's kind of slowed down. Brian, we talked about Hossa a little bit earlier when he was starting the season on a hot streak, and we were saying, like, sell high if you can. He won't be able to keep this up. Do you think, like, have you changed your mind about that at all? Or maybe he can keep up this production, like not like a point per game, but do we think he can be like a 60, 65 point player this year? He's playing with Panarin and Anisimov, so he has good line mates.
So I own him in one league. I actually owned him in two and then dropped him foolishly. I don't know why I thought he was the worst player on my roster. I'm pretty sure Camilleri was still on my roster at that point too. But I think that he can keep this up to some extent. You asked if he could be like a 60, 65 point guy. I'll take the lower end of that, but I'm still saying 60 points. Right now, he's riding a pretty high IPP at even strength, and that might be the worst thing I have to say about him. I mean, his even strength shooting percentage is a fair bit higher than it's been in previous years, and regression is going to come. But to his credit, all the other numbers under the hood, they're not showing a guy who's slowing down as dramatically as many imagined a soon-to-be 38-year-old Marian Hossa would. He certainly did not deserve the very poor half-point per game pace he had last year. I think it was 33 points and 64 games, and he was just snake-bitten. And I want to believe he can still get to 60. It might be a little easier to really surmise once the dust settles a bit more from this crazy pace he's on right now before making that declaration that he is definitely going to be a 60-point player. But I think he's got it in him to beat 55 points at least, which, if he managed it, would make him the 9th player aged 38 or older in the last 10 years to finish a season with that many points. Jaromir Jagr and Marty St. Louis, the only other guys to do it in the last 3 years. Hopefully Hossa can, and yeah, I do think Hossa can add his name to the list, especially with such a hot start. Like, he doesn't need to have a 55-point pace the rest of the year at this point to be able to get there, since he's already so much of the way there. I think his biggest enemy would be his own body and injuries. He's already missed a little bit of time this year. We'll see if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, I guess that's the big thing with him. But yeah, those are 3 great Hall of Famers there. And yeah, why shouldn't Marian Hossa join that list? Brian, I thought maybe you would have said maybe if Hossa was currently putting up a 60-point pace, you'd be more confident in him being able to do it. But since he's putting up an 80-point pace, he's probably just going to end up with like 50 or 40. And
I have nothing. I have nothing. I have no response.
Okay. And by the way, we should mention Artemi Panarin. We were talking about him in the offseason and saying he's good, but like we don't really know how good because we don't know how he would do without Patrick Kane. He's been not playing with Patrick Kane for a lot of this season, and he has 18 points in 19 games. So Artemi Panarin, definitely the real deal. Like, doesn't matter who his line mates are. Clearly, he's capable of putting up his own offense. Like, I mean, unless you want to say it's Marian Hossa that's carrying him, but I don't think so. Artemi Panarin is fantastic. Let's go to Edmonton. This is not really a guy on a hot streak, but it's a guy who I want to mention just because there's a new player playing with Connor McDavid. Pat Maroon has been bumped from that role, and insert Jesse Puljujarvi. And he actually assisted on 2 of McDavid's 3 goals yesterday. McDavid got a hat trick. He's awesome. Let's not even talk about him. But Jesse Puljujarvi, someone who I kind of had forgotten about. Like, he was healthy scratched for some games and really not doing anything in Edmonton. All of a sudden, on this great line, like, anyone has been able to put up points with McDavid. So I don't see why a blue chip prospect like Puljujarvi shouldn't be able to do something. I think he's worth a short-term ad while he's there. And if you look at the lines now, also Lucic is back with McDavid. It's been McDavid, Lucic, and Puljujarvi, and then Eberle with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Pat Maroon. So actually, Maroon doesn't get dropped back to the 4th line like maybe you would have thought he would. He's still in the top 6, so maybe there's still some value there. You don't have to like drop him immediately if you added him. Then you've got Draisaitl, Kassian, and Slepyshev on the next line, but Draisaitl's still on the top power play, but he hasn't really done much. I'd rather have Puljujarvi than Draisaitl, I think, right now. Of course, this is, again, one of these short-term ads until he gets dropped, unless you're in a keeper league, in which case there's maybe some more value for Puljujarvi. But we were asked by a patron recently who's his bottom player, and I looked at his roster, and I said Puljujarvi probably, and he was like, oh, I drafted him really high because it's a keeper league. And I was like, that's okay. I think you could probably drop him because it was only like a keep 6 or keep 7. But, you know, while he's with Connor McDavid, definitely don't drop Jesse Puljujarvi, right?
Yeah, right. Same way as Patrick Maroon. You shouldn't have dropped him while he was with McDavid as well. Remember, Elon, there's somebody who had a trade on the table, their Maroon for someone else's Lucic, and they're like, no, I'm keeping Maroon. There's no way I would trade him for Lucic. Now that he's without McDavid, I suppose maybe there's a little bit of regret, although Lucic not doing so well himself, pointless in his last 6 games played.
Right, yeah, but he's back in that good spot, so hopefully he'll be able to do something. He's also on the top power play. Jordan Eberle, 13 points in 19 games. Not horrible, but I don't know. I guess people were really excited about a breakout year for Eberle playing with McDavid, but he's also now not on the McDavid line. Like I said, he's playing with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Pat Maroon. Should people be concerned? Should Brian Eberle owners be concerned right now?
You just called him Brian Eberle.
Yeah, my brain is starting to sphere. What? Jordan? Oh, shit. Should Jordan Eberle owners be concerned right now?
What breakout does he need to have? He's had 63 and 65 points in recent years. He was on a similar pace last year. He's had a 76-point season. There's no breakout for Eberle coming. We just can count on him to be a 60-plus guy. Right now, he's on a 56-point pace, which maybe concerns some people, those 4 missing points. But the good news is that he's shooting just 9% at the moment, which is not very good for him. He's used to shooting higher than that. So his shooting percentage is going to get better, and so will his shooting percentage is going to get better. So will his goal totals. He's still averaging nearly 3 shots on goal per game. No big deal.
Okay, yeah, I meant more just because he's not playing with McDavid, but I think he'll still be fine also. Okay, final stop of the night, unless you want to go somewhere else, but I want to go to Winnipeg and talk about Marco Dano and Nick Petan, who have been playing with Blake Wheeler recently. Of course, the top line has been Laine with Ehlers and Mark Scheifele, and they've got Dano with Petan and Wheeler, and that's going to change soon because I think Brian Little's going to be back. But for the short term, each of those guys has 3 points in their last 4 games played. We got a tweet from @Braden Watling saying, @Keeping Karlsson, player suggestion if I may, Petan getting great looks and is producing while there are injuries. Get him while he's hot. And I was like, good call. I'll mention him on the podcast. Here it is, Brian. Is it worth looking at either of Marco Dano or Nick Petan right now?
I'm going to answer you in just a second.
Okay. Is there anyone still here in the chat room? There hasn't been any comments in a while. I guess we always go so long. I guess it peters out. Hope you guys are having fun. How you doing? Oh, you're doing research. What should I do? I guess I'll look at the scores. 2-2, Florida, New York. Oh, Calgary. Oh, Chad Johnson's going to get himself another win, maybe. 2-1 for Calgary. Oh, boy.
All right, Elon, I'm ready.
Another assist for Dougie Hamilton. Okay, go ahead.
I badly need a Detroit victory tonight. That's not a good place to be, counting on Detroit to win. Okay. Nick Petan is the one that probably interests me the most of those two. He's playing with Blake Wheeler. Doesn't get a ton of shots on goal, though. So if he's not putting up points, he's not doing a whole lot. He had a couple of power play points maybe a week ago, but still quiet on that front generally.
All right, so, some of these potential free agents we've talked about, like Brandon Sutter and Justin Williams and whoever, like, would you put Marco Dano and Nick Petan, like, below those guys? Jesse Puljujarvi?
Yeah, actually, I had Petan ranked as somebody I wanted to pick up for my roster today to try and win a couple categories at the end of the week. And I initially had him 2nd or 3rd amongst the list of 7th. He ended up down at like 6th out of that list of 7th behind Sam Gagner. So not somebody I'd put a high priority on, although if you're in a keeper league, this could be an option if he's somehow available and it's a deep enough keeper league that he's relevant.
Okay. All right. By the way, Dougie Hamilton has 2 assists today now against Detroit. And Chad Johnson's looking like he's going to maybe get another win. But anyways, maybe I should be giving all of these updates for people that are going to listen to the show tomorrow, and it will have been like a 4-2 Detroit win. Brian, oh wait, I have one more thing I want to ask you about. Since we're in Winnipeg, I guess we could call it at this point on Hellebuck versus Hutchinson. Hellebuck as clearly the starter, right? He's played 7 of the last 9 games. He has a .918 save percentage over the last month. Like, I feel like probably no one was wondering if it was still going to be a timeshare. I know the season started that way, but just wanted to throw it out there. Seems to me like it's over. Hellebuck wins.
Yeah, he's strung together 4 quality starts, which should be all it takes to make him the number 1, or at least the very clear number 1A, if you still want to hold a little bit of pessimism or caution towards it. The truth is, though, he's still been inconsistent aside from those 4 quality starts that he's just rattled off. He has a .910 save percentage on the year, bottom 5 goalie in the league, and even strength save percentage.
Who was that, sorry?
Hellebuck.
Oh. Well, he definitely has the opportunity. I think he's the starter, so hopefully he can build on that and get out of that bottom 5. All right, Brian, I'm good. Are you good?
I'm good, but I'd like to finish actually, Elon, so I'm not good. There's a snoozer that I want to get in ahead of the curve on. We've told you that Panic was a snoozer. We told you to hang on to Hossa. Artem Anisimov, I'm calling him a snoozer. He's still got a point per game pace, but that's incredible because he has just 1 point in his last 5 games, and in four of those five games, he has no shots on goal at all. I think he had 1 in the other, maybe 2. And there's still more regression still to come. So I'm calling him a snoozer. Put him in Snoozeville. You don't need him.
All right. Well, if you have Anisimov, maybe you can still try to trade him to someone who's just looking at the overall point totals and be like, I have a point per game guy. I'm going to give you a discount, though. I'll trade him for like a 60-point guy because I'm a nice guy. I don't know. Maybe if you could pull something like that off. I don't know if you necessarily need to drop him yet, but probably soon, right?
I think soon, like a lot of you who were holding steady on Panic for a while, his own percentage must be so much lower right now than it was even a week or 2 ago. I imagine the same thing happening to Anisimov. I mean, he's still in a very good spot in the lineup. The difference between him and Panic is that Panic drops out of the top 6. Anisimov's going to stay there, but the reminder I constantly offer is that he was there all of last year and managed a half point per game pace. There's going to be little runs where you'll wish you had him on your roster, but for the most part, he's not going to do a whole lot for you.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, same as last year, probably. I think he's like a good solid, like you could get 40 to 45, maybe 50-point pace out of him, but I wouldn't expect much more than that. Brian, this has been fun. I've really enjoyed this show, and we've gone long like always, but I think we covered a lot of guys, covered all those injuries, and then talked about some hot streak guys. If you like the show, let us know. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. We love to hear from you. Let us know if you have any feedback. Also, if you want to help support the show, you could go to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. That's always much appreciated. That helps out the show. You can also look into becoming a patron of Keeping Karlsson. If you want to sustainably help the show, buy Brian or I a beer at a pub once a month. $5 a month gets you a good feeling of knowing you're supporting your favorite best fantasy hockey podcast. And you also get access to our patron-only Facebook group. Ooh, don't we have a patron cast coming up?
Thursday.
Patron-only Facebook group where you can chat with Brian and I and all of the patrons of Keeping Karlsson, talking about all of our rosters and decisions. And it's always a lot of fun and a lot of help. It's nice to be able to post a question and get like 5-10 people responding and helping you out, including Brian and myself. Also, we have our monthly Patroncast, which is coming up this Thursday. So now's the time to become a patron. So you can join us for the Patroncast. It's a bonus episode where we answer all of your questions. We don't stop until all the questions are answered. So it's a lot of fun. Okay, that's all. Oh, wait. So if you're interested in becoming a patron of Keeping Karlsson, check out keepingkarlsson.com/patron. That's all I've got. Brian, so how about we cue the outro music? And why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
Before I do, Elon, sorry, you've already cued the music, perhaps.
Okay, cut the music. Cut the music.
Okay, we have Chad Johnson against Jimmy Howard in Detroit. If Jimmy Howard loses this game, what do you think of him?
It's not Jimmy Howard's fault that Detroit has only scored 1 goal. He's not having a bad game. He has a .917 save percentage on the night so far.
Okay, so maybe he can be a .917 goalie and still lose because he plays for Detroit. All right, this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was
let me interrupt you now. Let me interrupt you now. Cut the music again. So if Jimmy Howard is a if Jimmy Howard ends the game with a .917 average, does that mean that you like him better?
Like him better or consider what he's doing more sustainable, right? Like if there's a huge gap between what we expect and what he's achieving, then we assume there's something really abnormal going on. But if it's a small gap, maybe it's a manageable gap that he's actually created himself, that he's taken a small step up. A step up this big is not believable.
Okay, so like this is better. They're losing 2-1. If he had a shutout, that wouldn't be good. But since they're losing 2-1, it's like, okay, he's okay. You could add him. All right, anyways, why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
I'm not making any decisions based on one night of play. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast is presented by Dauber Hockey and supported by our patrons. It was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Corsica, Hockey Analysis, Hockey Reference, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
Great job as always, Brian. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll catch you all next week.
I'm bringing it home in just a sec.
Suspense.
Come
on, just do it.
Sorry, hang on.
What is happening?
I'm just
You
making.
You have one line you just have to say, then I could go and start working on the edit.
And thanks also to our latest patrons who I forgot to mention just now: Jeremy T, Jade B, Matthew D, Chris L, Ronnie S, Matthew S, and Paul B. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you in the Facebook group and with us supporting the show. To you guys and everybody else, until next time, keep on keeping Karlsson.
Wow, great.
I know you're not.
Thanks to those guys.
I know, but you're not impressed with what that's going to do for your edit.
This was so fun. Okay. Talk to you later. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.